Hello and welcome to Coding with Curry. I wanted to do a video on how to set up Firebase and Flutter. I'm using the provider package to store our user state. As you can see here, I have a login screen that I created. And here in our main, we're just setting the login as the home. And then if we go to our login screen here, we can see that we have a stateful widget and we have a auth mode enum here, which is just for the sign up and login state. Or not the state, but the sign up and login mode. So if we go down to our state here, you can see that I created a form key, which means that we have a form, and I have a password controller for our password input here. And we're setting the auth mode to login by default. So you can see here, we also have a user object that we're creating. If we go to our user model, we have email, password, and display name. So that's pretty simple. And if we go back to our login here, you can see we have a submit form here, which is just to validate our form and save our form. So we'll come back to this later and fill out this part. If you don't know how to use forms in Flutter, I created a video on how to do so. You should see the link above. So let's go down to our build method here. So we have a form here with a single child scroll view, and we have a column here, and we have our text. So if we press the switch button, it switches between login and sign up mode. So you can see here in sign up mode, we have display name, email, password, and confirm password. And then we can go back and forth like this. And the logic that helps us do that is this here. So we have a switch to, it'll either be sign up or login. So if we're in login, then we switch to sign up. If we're in sign up, then we switch to login. So in our on-press is where we actually switch the mode itself. So it's the same logic here for that. We don't have any Firebase code yet, but we'll get to that in a second. And then for our sign up button here, if we're in sign up mode, then we show sign up. If we're in login, then we show login, like so. Okay, so I also created a feed screen. It's very basic right now. We just have a text in the app bar here that says feed, and we have a logout button in the app bar too for the action. And then we're showing feed in the center. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new folder here. I'm going to go to lib and new folder and call it notifier. And then I'm going to create a new file and call the file auth notifier.dart. And now we're going to create a change notifier. If you're not familiar with this, then please look at my video that I did on creating or using provider in Flutter. So we're going to do class auth notifier, and then it'll be with change notifier. Okay, and then we'll have a FirebaseUser. So FirebaseUser is part of the Firebase package. You can see here in the pub spec that I have the Firebase package here and I have the provider package here. So let's go back to our notifier. We have FirebaseUser, and I'm going to say underscore because it's private. User, FirebaseUser, and I'm going to create a getter. So get user, and then return the underscore user. And then I'm going to have a function to set the user. I'm going to say set user FirebaseUser. And then I'm going to just set the private user to user. And then I'm going to notify the app that that's changed. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do for the notifier. So very basic. You can always add more to this later if you need to. So now I'm going to go to the main screen and I'm going to add our notifier to my app here. So I'm going to get rid of this and I'm going to use a multi-provider here. And then we have our providers here, and then I'm going to say change notifier provider, and then I'm going to have builder here, and I'm going to have the context, and then we're going to return the auth notifier. Okay, and then let's import auth notifier. Okay, that looks good. And down here, I want to actually wrap our widget in a consumer for our provider. And for the home here, this is going to be a consumer of type auth notifier. And then, so we have the builder here, and I'm going to put this on a separate line here. So we have builder, and it's going to be context, notifier, and child. And then we can actually return a component, or sorry, return a widget, and we'll say login here. So if the Firebase user changes in this notifier, then this will get rebuilt. But what if the user is already logged in? Then in that case, I want us to go straight to the feed widget. I don't want us to go to the login widget. So in order to do that, I want to actually have a condition here. So I'm going to say notifier.user. So first we're going to check this, and if it's not equal to null, then I'm going to show the feed widget, else I'm going to show the login widget. So we need to import this and save. So this is saying if we have a user already in our notifier, which means that you already signed in, then I want to show the feed widget. If not, then I want to show the login widget. So every time we change that user in the notifier here, then this consumer will get notified, and then we will rebuild this and either return feed or login. Okay, so that's it for our main here. Okay, so now we'll actually get to the Firebase part, and we will create a new folder in our lib folder, and we'll call it API, and we'll create a new file, food API.dart. Okay, and the first thing I want to do is create a login function. So login and user. So we're going to pass in the user to this login, and we're actually going to pass in the auth notifier too. Auth notifier, and we'll call it auth notifier. Okay, and this will be an async function too. So I'm going to have the async word here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to await Firebase auth is how you access your Firebase authentication methods. And we're going to get the instance of that. So we're going to say Firebase auth.instance. And then we're going to say .sign in with email and password. So if we go to the Firebase docs here, you can see that in our manage users here for the web, to get the currently signed in user, the recommended way is to use onAuth state changed, but we're going to use a different way for our app. And if you're down here, you can get the current user. So this syntax is a little bit different with Flutter, but it's the same idea. And you can see here that we have our create user with email and password where we actually sign up a new user. But going back to our app here, sign in with email and password is how you sign in with a email and password. We have an email field here for our user.email, but first let's import our user model here, and we'll do user.email. And then we need a password, so we do user.password. Okay, and now we can do a catch error. So that's part of the Firebase API here, and catch error. And then we're not going to do anything with this now. We could just do error and then just print out the error here. So we can do error and print out maybe like the error code. So we can do .code. And now we want to check the result from this. So we need to assign this to something. So this returns a auth result feature. So we need to do auth result, and we'll just call it auth result, and we'll set it equal to this. Okay, and now we can check if auth result is not equal to null, then we can actually get our Firebase user from this auth result. So auth result contains a Firebase user object. So we can do Firebase user, and we'll just call it Firebase user equals auth result, and then dot, and we have a user here. So it says user returns the currently signed in Firebase user, or null. And now we want to check the Firebase user. So we can say if Firebase user not equal to null, then we want to actually, first let's print out the result. So we can do print, and then we can do login, let's just call it login. And we'll, actually for login, we'll print out the Firebase user. So we're going to do a $sign to get the actual object, and then just say Firebase user. So this will either be a JSON object or it'll be a null object. Okay, and then we'll do auth notifier, because now we have our notifier here, and then we want to set the user. So we can do .set Firebase user. Okay, so if we sign in and we get a Firebase user back from our auth result, then we set that as the user in our notifier. So this is just a way for us to track our user in our app and allow the provider to notify different parts of our app that the user has changed. Okay, so now let's go down here, and now we want to create a method for sign up, and this will be a little bit similar. So we'll do sign up, and then we'll pass in the user again, user, and then we'll pass in the auth notifier. So auth notifier, and this will be async also. So async, and then we want to have a auth result here too. So auth result, and we want to await Firebase. So a very similar pattern here, auth.instance. But instead of sign in with email and password here, we use that method that we saw in the docs here, create user with email and password. Okay, so we'll do dot create email with user and password. And we'll pass in very similar things up here. We'll pass in email, and we'll set it to user.email and password, user.password. Okay, and we can do dot catch error. I'm just going to copy and paste this here to save some time. And now here we can copy and paste this condition here. And I want to copy and paste this condition too, because we're going to be checking very similar things here, but in a slightly different way. The thing that we want to do with our sign up process is we want to set the display name that the user put. So if we go to switch sign up, this display name can only be set after the user is first created. That's kind of a pain to do, but it's not really that bad. And you only need to do it one time when the user signs up. Let's go here, and the first thing we need to do is create a new object of type user update info. So this is part of the extra data that is in the Firebase profile for the user. So if you look here, it says it's the user profile data that can be updated by update profile. So we'll be using this here in a second too. So user update info, just call it update info, and equals user update info, call the constructor here. And then we'll do update info, and we'll do dot. And you can see that we have a couple different options here. We have display name and photo URL, but we'll do display name. And for the display name, we'll set it equal to user.displayName, because that's set inside of our user object. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing that we did up here. We get the Firebase user, and we check if it's null. If it's not null, then we do something else. So here we actually want to take this user update info and update the user profile. So we do await, because it's a feature. We do await Firebase user and dot. So here you have a few different options here too, but we want to use dot update profile. Okay, and then we just pass in that update info to the profile. Update info. Okay, and now we are going to do something else that is a bit of a pain, but it has to be done, because when you update the profile, it doesn't update the information on the local machine right away. So we need to actually call a method called reload on the Firebase user object. So it's a feature also, so we do await, and then we say Firebase user and dot reload. So it says it refreshes the data of the current user, for example, display name and so on. This is a good habit if you are updating your profile. You might not always need to call this, but it doesn't hurt. And if you are not seeing your data refreshed, this would be the reason why. So we call reload, and then we can just print something just to do some debugging later if we need to. So we can do print, and let's do sign up, and we will do the same thing that we did up here. We use the $ Firebase user. Okay, and now we actually want to set the user like we did above, but we need to get the current user back from the API first. So we need to call current user on the Firebase user object. So we can do Firebase user current user, and then we can do await Firebase user and .instance. Oops, sorry, Firebase auth .instance and do current user. So this will refetch the current user after we have reloaded the information. And then we can do auth notifier.set user. So you may or may not have to do this in your app. It kind of depends how quickly things are processed on the server. But doing it this way and retrieving the current user again ensures that the data is current. Okay, and that's all we need to do for the sign up. So we're logging in or signing up, and we're getting the current Firebase user, and we're setting that locally inside of our provider notifier. Okay, so let's go down here, and now we're going to create a sign out method. So we're going to set the user to null in this case. So we're going to have sign out, and we're only going to pass in the auth notifier in this case. So we're going to say auth notifier. This will be async. And then we want to do await. So here we don't actually need to assign this to anything because it doesn't return anything. So we do await Firebase auth.instance, and now we can do sign out, which is a part of the Firebase API. So sign out, and then we can do catch error and do something similar, but we'll just copy and paste this for now to save some time. Okay, so we have that, and now we do auth notifier.set user and just set it to null. And that's it for our sign out. Okay, and now there's one last method that I want to create. I want to create one to get the current user from Firebase if we're already signed in. So it's similar to what we did up here, but in this case, we're only retrieving the user. So we're going to say initialize, see if I spelled that right, initialize current user, and then we'll pass in the auth notifier again, auth notifier, and this will be async, and then we will do, let's just copy and paste this line here. So current user, we'll call this Firebase user, okay? And now we will check if Firebase user not equal to null, then we just want to set it. Auth notifier dot set user to Firebase user. So if you want to, you could just call this method here and replace this line if you want to, like these two lines if you want to, but it's not a big deal. I'm just doing this so you have a separate method to show that we want to get the current user if we are signed in at app launch. Okay, so this is all we need for our food API file here. So we have sign out, sign up, login, and initialize current user. So now let's see how we actually use these methods. Let's go to our login page here. And up here at the top, we are first going to add our initialize method. So init state is the initial state for the login state here. So we're going to do init state, and we're going to say auth notifier. And then I'm doing this because I want to get the provider object. So the change notifier object. I want to do equals provider dot of. So let's import this. Provider dot of. It'll be of type auth notifier. And then we want to do listen false. So I talked about all this on the video that I did with provider in Flutter too. So this makes sure that we don't listen to any change, and we're just using this to access our auth notifier provider. So now we can call that method in the API. So we can say initialize current user and just pass in that auth notifier. And that's it. If we are already logged in when we first launch the app, then we'll call this method and set that Firebase user in our auth notifier, which will in turn trigger this consumer again, and it'll check this condition, and we'll see that the Firebase user is not null, so we'll go to the feed screen. When the app first launches, this will always be null, and then the login screen will get invoked. But very quickly after that, we will be calling that init state method, which will set our user to the Firebase user if it exists. And then if it does, we'll say feed. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is to go to our submit form here. So if we have a valid form, then we save. And then I want to do the same thing here. So I'm going to copy and paste this here. And we're not going to listen again. We just want access to it. And now in our condition here, we're checking to see what the auth mode is. If the auth mode is login, I want to call the login method from our food API. And then we pass in the user. So we have the _user. And remember, we're setting the user data here. So we're setting the display name, the email, and the password. So we have the user here, and then we pass in our auth notifier. And then we can copy and paste this and put it here. And we replace login with signup. And that's it. So if we are logging in or signing up, we take this auth notifier and our user, and we take that data and we pass it to these functions, and they call the Firebase methods, which in turn set our local change notifier. It sets the user inside of that. And then if that happens, then we trigger our provider listeners throughout the app, which in our case is only our consumer here. So as of right now, this home widget here is the only thing that cares about the change in the Firebase user here. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, let's go back to our login here. And now I want to go down to our build method. And I think I want to create a print line here just for debugging. So let's do print, and we'll say building login screen. Okay. So the only thing that we really did here is we got our current user from the Firebase database, and we set it for our auth notifier here. And we're calling our login and signup methods, which set the Firebase user if it's not null. Okay, so let's try out what we have now. Let's restart, and we're getting an error. Okay, I think I know why we're getting this. So let's go to our main here. And yeah, I forgot to put in the child here. So child and my app. Okay, so reload. No errors this time. So let's actually create a new user. Actually, let's test this first. Let's put in something random here to test this. See if this doesn't do anything. Okay, so we have nothing here, no errors. So now let's go to sign up, and we'll do all ones. So 1 10 times, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and we'll have the display name be Julian, and we'll have the confirm password be the same. And now let's see what happens when we press the, let's clear this first. Let's press sign up. And you can see that we went to our feed page after we signed up. So let's look down here real quick. In our logs here, we have sign up. So let's go to food API. So we were able to pass in our data here, and we signed up with the Firebase user. And you can see our data is here, but our display name is not here. So first, let's actually print the Firebase user here. So we'll print Firebase user. Let's do it inside here. So we'll print this first, and then we'll reload. So you can see that our Firebase display name is correct here. So now let's find a way to put our display name instead of our app bar here. So instead of feed here, we'll show our display name, which should be Julian in our case. So let's go to the feed screen. And first we'll go to our build method, and we will use our auth notifier. So I'm just going to copy and paste this from here. And again, we're not going to listen for it. We're just going to use the method here, or use the user here. So we'll import this and import provider. Okay, and now we have our auth notifier. And I'm just going to print a line here just for debugging. So we'll do print, and we'll do building feed. Okay. And now for our title here, we want to show the user from the auth notifier. So we're going to create a condition that we've seen before in this video. So we're going to say auth notifier.user. I'm going to say if it's not equal to null, then we will display the auth notifier.user.displayName. Else we could just show the same thing that we're showing now, which is feed. Okay, so let's reload. And now you can see that we have Julian here in the top. And the last thing I want to do is implement our sign out functionality. So that's really easy. We have our button here. So now I want to do an arrow function, and we will call sign out from our API and pass in the auth notifier, and that's it. And then we will reload. We're still logged in, and now let's press the button to sign out. First, let's clear this, and we will log out. And ta-da, we go back to our login screen because our consumer was called and it is saying that the user is null, so we do login. And that's it. So let's log in again just to be sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we will clear this and log in. And you can see that we've logged in, and you can see Julian here, and everything is looking good. Our login is, our display name is here, Julian, and all of our user data is here in our Firebase user object. I tried to make a very simple example using Provider because I love Provider. It's a great way for you to store state in your app and to rebuild only parts of the app that you want to rebuild. But in our case, we are rebuilding the entire app if the user changes because that affects the entire app. But later on, we'll be adding more providers to this that only affect different widgets on different screens. So yeah, I hope this helps you get started with Firebase, and stay tuned for more Firebase videos with Flutter because there's a lot more to cover, and happy coding. Bye.